Welcome to the interesting news. June 21, 2023. Global warming could shrink Himalayan glaciers by up to 80%. According to new report in Time. Glaciers are melting at unprecedented rates across the Hindu Kush Himalayan mountain ranges and could lose up to 80% of their volume this century if greenhouse gas emissions aren't sharply reduced. According to a report. The report Tuesday from Kathmandu-based International Center for Integrated Mountain Development warned that flash floods and avalanches would grow more likely in coming years. And that the availability of fresh water would be affected for nearly 2 billion people who live downstream of 12 rivers that originate in the mountains. Ice and snow in the Hindu Kush Himalayan ranges is an important source of water for those rivers, which flow through 16 countries in Asia and provide fresh water to 240 million people in the mountains and Anther 1.65 billion downstream. The people living in these mountains who have contributed next to nothing to global warming are at high risk due to climate change, said Amina Maharjan, a migration specialist and one of the report's authors. Current adaptation efforts are wholly insufficient, and we are extremely concerned that without greater support, these communities will be unable to cope. Various earlier reports have found that the cryosphere regions on Earth covered by snow and ice are among the worst affected by climate change. Recent research found that Mount Everest's glaciers, for example, have lost 2,000 years of ice in just the past 30 years. We map out for the first time the linkages between cryosphere change with water, ecosystems and society in this mountain region. Among the key findings from Tuesday's report are that the Himalayan glaciers disappeared 65% faster since 2010 than in the previous decade, and reducing snow cover due to global warming will result in reduced fresh water for people living downstream. The study found that 200 glacier lakes across these mountains are deemed dangerous, and the region could see a significant spike in glacial lake outburst floods by the end of the century. The study found that communities in the mountain regions are being affected by climate change far more than many other parts of the world. It says changes to the glaciers, snow and permafrost of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region driven by global warming are unprecedented and largely irreversible. Effects of climate change are already felt by Himalayan communities, sometimes acutely. Earlier this year, the Indian mountain town of Joshimath began sinking and residents had to be relocated within days. Once ice melts in these regions, it's very difficult to put it back to its frozen form, said Pam Pearson, director of the International Cryosphere Climate Initiative, who was not involved with the report. She added, "It's like a big ship in the ocean. Once the ice starts going, it's very hard to stop. So, with glaciers, especially the big glaciers in the Himalayas, once they start losing mass, that's going to continue for a really long time before it can stabilize." Pearson said it is extremely important for Earth's snow, permafrost and ice to limit warming to the 1.5 degrees Celsius agreed to at the 2015 Paris Climate Conference. "I get the sense that most policymakers don't take the goal seriously, but in the cryosphere, irreversible changes are already happening," she said. Greece shipwreck. Heart-wrenching tales of Pakistanis seeking a better life. Pakistani embassy in Greece confirms rescue of 12 Pakistani nationals. My nephew, Shahbaz Mahmood, worked as a barber in Saudi Arabia, where he earned good money. However, he then made plans to go to Europe and finalized the arrangements while still in Saudi Arabia. This was stated by Kushal Khan, a resident of Azad Jammu and Kashmir's Khel sector in Kotli district, who claimed that his nephew, Shahbaz, along with 3 neighboring youths, Chaudhry Azad, Chaudhry Nasir, and Nabil Butt, were among the missing individuals in the Greek shipwreck tragedy. He recalls that Shahbaz was prohibited from pursuing his plan, not just by his father but by everyone who knew about it. However, Khan said, Approximately 2 months ago, Shahbaz returned from Saudi Arabia to Pakistan, stayed at home for only 5 days, and then embarked on his journey to Europe. According to Khan, Shahbaz has 2 children and was the sole breadwinner for his family. Shahbaz had informed his family about boarding the ship before leaving his home. He added, "If China and US normalize ties." According to Javed Naqvi, John Pilger warned in a documentary about an imminent US war on China. There are those that worry it could erupt between China and India even sooner. Both scenarios could be right, and both are hopefully wrong. That the world economy is grappling with a looming recession doesn't help, and it would be naive not to see its hand in the tragic Russia-Ukraine conflict. However, on the eve of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's first state visit to the US this week, it was interesting to see Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Beijing, the highest-ranking visit by a US official to China in years. That he was accorded an unscheduled meeting with President Xi Jinping could signal where the two countries are seeking to be with each other, despite the baggage of recent history. Moreover, Xi is almost certainly planning to be at this year's APEC meeting in San Francisco in November. That's when the heat would be building in the US presidential race. Spin-offs for President Joe Biden's electoral calculus in Xi's visit can't be discounted. Depending on the news Blinken carries home from his meetings with top Chinese diplomats and Xi himself. The fact that Bill Gates was accorded a meeting with Xi a day before Blinken's arrival may indicate the side the bread is buttered for Sino-US ties. To reinforce the trajectory, Elon Musk just left Beijing singing praises of China. Unlike the current Indian dispensation, which leans on Mr. Modi for every important diplomatic messaging or economic negotiation, the Chinese operate at several fronts and at various levels. China's Prime Minister began key visits to Germany and France while his Foreign Minister dealt with Blinken. Among the objectives is to remind Europe of the peril it has landed itself in by mindlessly following the US dog whistle on Ukraine. In most cases less than enthusiastically. Whatever be the substance of the Blinken talks, Beijing has kept its sights riveted to the eye of the moving fish to shoot the arrow at. A tentative delinking of economic perspective seems visible. Consider the fact that while the US Fed has not raised its interest rates this time around, indicating some degree of economic stabilization, music to Biden's ears, European banks had to tweak the rates still higher to combat their inflation. In this chaos, the Chinese are looking the most composed. Relatively. Whatever be the substance of the Blinken talks, Beijing, like Arjuna the warrior prince in the epic Mahabharata, has kept its sights riveted to the eye of the moving fish to shoot the arrow at. The fish is Taiwan, a non-negotiable reality for the Xi presidency. Still, the Chinese are diligently following the Modi visit but without any evident malice towards New Delhi. The Global Times works under the Chinese Communist Party. There were 2 useful comments the paper offered on India's burgeoning ties with Washington. A pocket cartoon showed an elephant and a panda as boxers in the ring, gloves on, and raring to go at each other, while Uncle Sam, playing the referee albeit from outside the ring, is shouting, "Fight! Fight! Fight!" There's no mistaking who or what the 2 boxers represent. In a separate commentary on the visit, the paper applauded India's industrial prowess and its growing economic sinews. It also had some handy advice, which could be dismissed as gratuitous had it not ticked several boxes, which are of concern to a whole host of Indians. The Global Times noted that India's economy has developed rapidly, achieving a robust growth of 7.2% last year. Clearly, India is entering a period of rapid growth. The government attempts to drive growth through pushing several long-term projects, reforms to build a robust financial system and increase supply-side adjustments, the paper said. But it also cautioned, These correct choices also make it necessary for India to make profound changes for the competence of the population and the labor force in the future. Essentially a secularis spiritual overhaul, which can build a solid foundation for India's opening up. This is the way India can become a leading global economy, and what can the US strategy bring to India? Moreover, India needs all-embracing reforms like China's. Had China not adopted a two-wheel drive policy of reform and opening up more than 40 years ago, it would not be the second largest economy in the world. The status of China and India in the world will depend on their respective attitudes toward embracing the world. Sage advice. Mr. Modi is being accorded a rare second address to the US Congress during the trip. 5 previous prime ministers have addressed the Congress, once each, beginning with Jawaharlal Nehru. The issues have been constant, but the finesse with which they were presented varied. Indira Gandhi was received with aplomb by Ronald Reagan but denied the opportunity the others got of speaking to the Congress. Retribution for her defense pact with the USSR. The pact's benefits have not stopped accruing, however, including to Modi's India. As enshrined in special ties with Moscow, Nehru had a clearer idea of what India sought without compromising its sovereignty. I have come here on a voyage of discovery of the mind and heart of America and to place before you our own mind and heart, he told the US Congress in 1949. We realize that self-help is the first condition of success for a nation, no less than for an individual. We are conscious that ours must be the primary effort and we shall seek succor from none to escape from any part of our own responsibility. But though our economic potential is great, its conversion into finished wealth will need much mechanical and technological aid. We shall, therefore, gladly welcome such aid and cooperation on terms that are of mutual benefit. But we do not seek any material advantage in exchange for any part of our hard-won freedom. That hard-won freedom will be on test during the Modi trip.